Alright members, so to get started, let's get our materials ready. I've got 2 pieces of 18 gauge round soft copper wire. That's going to be for our earring frame. They're cut to 10 inches long each, and I've just straightened them out with my fingers. I've got 10 pieces of 20 gauge round soft copper wires, and these are all cut to 3 inches each. You know, or approximate. I'm off a millimeter or two on 1 or 2 of them, but it's no big deal. It's 3 inches each, 10 pieces of 20 gauge round soft copper. And then I have 6 pieces of 26 gauge round soft copper wire, and these are also cut to 3 inches each. I have 2 flat back round cabochon. These are colored quartz, and they are 12 millimeter round and about 3 millimeter thick. And they're a nice matching pair. So the first thing I'll do is I'll straighten all of my wires. You can do this, you know, either with your fingers, or you can do the rolling pin and get the lumps and warps off of your wires. Let me just move all this out of the way. So I'll straighten these wires with my wooden dowel by just doing the rolling pin action on them. And that gets all of the little warps out of the wire that come from the spool. Roll out your 20 gauge wires. I like to do them several at a time. Give about a ½ inch distance between them. The short ones are easy because you don't have to hold onto it too much, and just roll carefully. Little pressure on the rolling pin. And that gets you some nice straight wires as well. And that makes some nice, beautiful straight wires for you. So they look nice. I'll put them all together. Since they're all approximately the same size, I don't worry about the millimeter or so that I'm off, but if it bothers you, you can tap the one side all down on the table, get them uniform, and then just trim these if you want to. Then I'll lay them down here across my measure, 1, 2, 3 inches. And I'm just going to mark the center of all these wires. Since they're all the same size and all the same length, and they're going to serve all the same purpose, actually 8 of them, so we'll have to take 2 of them out. Save 2 of them for the earring hooks for later. Put them up there. And we've got 8 wires right here now on our 3 inches of block, and I'll just go to 1½ inch, and I'll make a mark down all these wires. Then I'll roll them and mark the other side of the wire and roll them and mark the other side of the wire. That way I can kind of see the marks all on all sides of the wire. So just the center mark works. Then take your 2 18 gauge wires. These are 10 inches long each, and lay them down here and mark the 5-inch center. Let me get it over here for you. Mark the 5-inch center. And again, these are just to help your eyeballs a little bit. All right. With the 18 gauge wires marked in the center, I'm going to take a flat nose plier. Your chain nose works as well. Just hold on to that center mark within your plier. Get a nice healthy grip on it and just use the side of your plier and push the wires up into about a 45-degree bend. Just like that. I like to tap all sides of this point just to make them all nice and even. And then again, that's about 45 degrees. And the reason I chose 45 degrees is because by the time we curve this out, the center of the wire, it's about a good diameter for my 12mm round bead. So next, you can do these one at a time. You can do them together. You can use a dowel that is approximately 12mm. This retractable Sharpie marker happens to be very close to that, so I'm just going to use the top of this marker, but you could find another wooden dowel or a thick, pen that you have that is close to the diameter of your stone. We'll put the two wires together into the dowel, push until you have about 3 or 4mm right there at the tip. We just want to leave a little bit of space right there. So I just push, let the wires fan out a little bit, and then pinch the sides back in. Hold this quite firmly in place. Pinch the sides back in and around your dowel until the wires pass each other. And then to set them up for making mirrored earrings, you want to take one of these and flip them to the opposite side. So I'll take this inside one, part it, and bring it to the outside. So you've got two wires coming to the inside and two wires passing to the outside. And that sets you up for mirrored earrings. And I'm making sure that this crisscross is center as it comes down to my point. And I'm actually going to slide this into the thicker part of my Sharpie marker and make that round space a little curvier. The whole earring from the crisscross to the point. Should be about 1.5, and I'm a little bit shy. They crisscross at 1/4, 1 1/4. So I'm going to increase the size of my wires just by bending them out slightly right here. Pinch to give yourself some more length, and then you can stick your finger up in there to cause a little bit of tension. Don't push the earring out of shape. Just cause a little tension to part those wires out. Go back down on your measure, and that's about right. About 1.5 inches. You can make them 1 1/4 if you want to, but I kind of like them a little bit longer. So by doing that crisscross, the way I showed you, when you flip them over, you are set up with mirrored image. So one goes to the left, one goes to the right, and given your points look fairly similar, you are set up for mirrored earrings. Now you can come down here to the measure, make sure it's all laying flat, put your point on where 4 squares cross. Follow the wires up to here, and you can mark right there at where they crisscross, and I'm just going to open them up a little more because I'm still not quite at 1.5. So that's at 1.5 where they crisscross right there. I'm going to mark both sides of the lower wire, and I'm going to mark straight across the top of the upper wire. I'll let you see that a little closer here. So I made a mark on the top here where the line goes, and then I marked right here and right here on the lower wires. And that helps me to keep my crisscross together and where it should be. I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over and mark the other side up as well. So I'll make a line right here where they cross, and then one to either side. So it's kind of like I just know where to reshape them. Okay, and I'll do the same with this side. Get it laying on a measure where 4 squares cross, intersect here, and then make sure that your earring frame is 1.5 inches. And I'll make a mark on the upper wire, on the lower wire to either side. And I'm just giving a little outward pull so that when the wires come back in, they meet right there at that intersection. And I'll just mark this side, the upper wire where they crisscross, and then the lower wire to either side of that. And that just helps me realign when I bring them back together to bend them later. Plus, we're going to hammer this frame, so it'll also help you. The hammering might change the shape a little bit, so it might help you stay in line with that. And the last thing we want to do is just make sure that our stone sits in that curved area in such a way that it's not too big, because we're going to hammer it. And so we want a decent fit right there. So I've got about a millimeter, a breadth of space between those curves and my stone. And I just want to check both wires. And indeed, they fit my stones quite well. So you should be able to seat your wire all the way down, seat your stone all the way down, and let the stone pass through the wire. This one needs to be just slightly bigger. And again, as I alter this, I'm still keeping, all I did was pull them apart a little bit to give a little outward tension, and that fits really good there. Okay. So next, we'll check the shape of this area. I'm a little bit off. I don't mind that because it kind of, looks like they're pointing inward a little bit. But if you feel like you need to adjust your curves at all, you can. Just keep your measure in line and an eyeball on the size of your earring. So both my curves hit this 1/4 inch, this 1/2 inch mark up here. My 2 slopes are right to the inside of that 1/4 inch, and the point is right here where 4 corners meet. And I'll check this mirrored earring, get it lined up to make sure it's similar. And indeed, my 2 curves, it's a little higher. My 2 curves hit right there at the 1/2 inch mark. I'm just inside of my 1/4 inch marks, and my point is down here where 4 squares meet. So that's pretty good. I feel like they're both symmetrical, and they crisscross up here at 1.5 inches. Okay? So the next thing we'll do is we'll hammer these curves out and flare them out. So I've got my bench block on top of my sandbag, and I'm going to take my first earring frame, lay it down here, making sure that I keep my marked intersection here in line while I hammer. I'm just going to hammer on these curves more and flare them out as I go. I'm going to use my ball peen hammer, and I'll strike more on the curve and less on the straightaways that go into the points. And that'll give me a nice decorative flare. You can flare that out to your liking. Once you have your curve flared out nicely, we're just going to tap a little bit into the point and tap a little bit this way to blend the transition of the metal. So you can see that I didn't hammer too much. I hope you can see it. I'm going to hammer a little bit more. Till you've got a nice shape. So I've got a nice flare here, and it tapers up and into the rest of the earring, making sure to hold on to that position because the hammering changes it. So you just want to make your earring, make sure that you stay crisscrossed right there. And I'll sand all of that, but I'll hammer all this out next. Then I'll just tap the metal to blend the hammering into the rest of what is not hammered. And because I have a crisscrossed wire here, I'm going to go to the edge of my block so that when I hammer up here, I'm not going to dent the metal up top. So hopefully you can see how I'm laying down on my block here. And that's pretty good. I like a little bit of a irregular slope so that, the earrings look like they're coming inward versus just down. But you could alter your curve however you'd like. Just making sure that you stay within the size that you intended. And then after hammering, it should not have changed the metal so much that your stone, your stone should still fit right there quite nicely with just a breath of space between it and the wire. I'm going to fix this little spot up here that's bugging me. That's pretty good. And now I'll hammer my second earring wire. And that looks pretty good. After I hammer, I do like to put the earrings back together, just right on top of each other. And check, the overall sizing, if they're similar, or the hammering, if it's similar in flare, or if you need to hammer one or the other one a little bit more. I think these are pretty good. So just making sure to shape my wires if I need to. And now I'm going to go ahead and sand everything and make it nice and smooth. I'll use my 2000 grit. You could also use 1000 first, but these are little bitty frames, so I'm just going to sand all the sides even, the surface, and then the inside surface a little bit, or as much as you want, or not at all. So just turn it over and lightly sand the opposite side of your earring as well. Or you don't have to. That's pretty good. So I'll do the opposite earring now. Okay, that's pretty good. Compare both earrings and make sure that they look good to you, sanded, and that they're, shaped fairly evenly. I am gonna, this one is a little bit in. And that looks good to me. And again, you can put them on top of each other. Hold the wires together and just make sure that they're shaped similarly. That looks pretty good. So now we'll add, I don't turn these down, these wires here. I don't start turning them down until I've added the under elements, because they'll just be in your way. So that's why these marks are kind of important, and you're always checking your frame to make sure that it stays flat and nice and the same size that you want it to be. And those look pretty good there. They look pretty good. They're lined up, they're hammered and sanded, and so they're ready to go. So I'll take two, I'll work one earring at a time. But what I want you to make note of is that, see, the curves are right here at this 1/2 inch mark. So what we need to do is build a little back seat for the stone using these 3-inch pieces that curve to the center of your stone. The wraps are right here at the very top of the stone and right at the bottom of the stone. So we'll try to set it up in such a way that when the stone is in there, the wraps from the back are right here, so right at the top and lower corners of the stone. Okay? So we'll address the back first. I'm going to do 2 pieces at a time per earring. I'll just align those centers, and right there I'm just going to try to make a nice U bend with my finger that is approximately 12 millimeter, or it's going to fit my 12 millimeter stone. And I just use that center as a guide and make a nice U shape out of these wires. a U shape like that. And that looks pretty good. And your stone doesn't have to sit in it, but I kind of do that and just figure out that I'm at the right length. So I take these two. This is my little trick on how to do it anyway. You lay your earring frame down on your measure so you know that this is your center line. Okay? You can skirt these two wires in here, watching how close you are to the bottom. So that's about a quarter of an inch. And my U stops at the center. And I'll bring in the other side. I'll align those two little marks that I made and get them fairly close. So I'm looking at the distance between where it contacts here to here and where it contacts here to this point. I'm going to raise it just slightly over here. And that looks pretty good. So it's a little bit tricky of a hold, but once you get it in there, you can take your Sharpie marker, and you know that you're going to have to bend the wire right here. So make a mark on the 20 gauge without letting it move, and mark the other outside position of the 20 gauge right outside your frame. And then do the same for the opposite wire. And these will just help to keep your bends consistent. I also mark where it crosses my frame, right here and right here, and right here and right here. And that just helps you get an eyeball on where everything should bend and be. Okay, so hopefully that helps you. I know it's a little hard to see, but so I've got the 4 marks there. And I can position my 20 gauge right at those marks, and I know that that is the center. Okay, so once you get that, just going to start with this lower bend first. It's okay if you're out like a millimeter or so. I'm just trying to give you ways to get an accurate bend. You could just free eyeball this whole thing too. And I'm just going to not move anything, but right here at where my mark is, I'm going to make a 90-degree turn in the wire. It's a little squirrely to hold on to it. I'm going to cut the wire down. I've got about an inch there. You could have used shorter wire than this, but I like to just eyeball things. I've got a 1/2 inch there. And I'll take my fine plier, and without repositioning anything, I'll just take this wire over the edge of my frame and tap it down, and then roll it to the back. One nice solid wrap. I could go 2, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to do one nice solid wrap. This is 20 gauge wire, so it should hold. Once I get that wrap through, I'm going to go ahead and wrap the other one. So I'll get my second mark lined up. Make my camera. Get that second mark lined up. That's pretty close there. I'll take a 90-degree bend in this wire without shifting anything. Try to kind of point it to the outside of the curve. I'll make it a little easier for you. Cut it down to where there's about a 1/2 inch so you can deal with it. Take your plier and turn the tip of the wire to start it going in the right direction. And you can tap it down right here, right against the frame. Hold on to the 20 gauge wire and then take this around to the back. So just like that. We'll cut these two ends off so that it lays back there and doesn't peek out the side. So I'll take a real close and deep cut and I'll leave just about 1 millimeter there so that when I lay it down, it lays right there to the edge and on the frame, but is not offensive to the front. And it doesn't poke out the side here. And I'll do the same with this one. Take a nice deep cut, leaving about 1 millimeter there, and then tap it down so that it lays on that back frame. So in the front, it looks like this. That looks pretty good. We're going to put another wire and, do some design over it. So just make sure that they're not totally sticking out. If you feel like you can see it, you can take a little, or feel it, you take a little bit of your sanding paper and sand that edge nicely. Or take your file if you need to and shave it back nicely. Okay? So we'll put on the opposite wire now. And I'll handle it in the same way. I'll align my marks a little bit, and it's okay if they're a little bit out. So I'll align my wire up, take a bend up. You can even bend it, more if you want to. Take it over. Cut it to where you've got about 1/2 inch so you can pass through comfortably. Tap the wire down nice right there at your mark. Use your plier to help you bring it around if you need. And then come down here and wrap the second one. Same thing, hold everything in place. And then right here at the mark, take a 90-degree upturn. You can even bend it more over the bar a little bit. Snip the wire off so that you got about 1/2 inch there. And that way when you tap it down, you might have to put a little curve on the end of it. And that way when you tap it down, it should pass through the frame nicely for you. Turn it over and you can use your plier, hold on to the curve nice and tight. Use your plier to help you get over the frame and onto the back. And leave it upturned slightly so that I can get a nice close cut on it, leaving just 1 millimeter so that when I tap it down, it lays nice and flat right there, barely visible and right at the edge of my frame. You could go around twice if you want to. I feel like one wrap is good for this because it's 20 gauge wire. Okay, nice deep tap. And that makes a nice back seat for the stone. I'm still always watching to make sure I'm crisscrossed right there. And then when I drop the stone in, you can see that my bends are just to the bottom corners and top corners of my stone, and my stone should sit right in there nicely. Just like that. Okay, we'll do the second earring. So same thing with the second earring. We'll take 2 more pieces of 20 gauge at 3 inches long. Just start a nice curvy bend right there. You could also use the top of your Sharpie marker, since that's what we also use to bend the wires. We just double check that that gets my stone in there, and it does. So I'll put these 2 underneath my frame. Put those dots together in the center. Kind of align my wires nicely. And I'm checking to make sure that, it hits on that 1/4 mark and up there at the top too. That's pretty good. And then I'll just make some marks across the front of my earring frame so that I know where they bend over. And then right here, to the outside of the 20 gauge so that I know where to bend them. And that's about good. I'll pick this up. I'll make sure that my wires are crossed at the top still. Gonna align my marks over here. You can even trim this now if you want. Put your plier about 1 millimeter off the frame. Hold the curve on the bottom so you have some leverage. Turn it straight up into the air for 90-degree bend. You can turn it past 90 degrees, re-grip with your pliers so you get some room. Turn a little curve into the tip, point it down. Scoot your fingers out of the way. And then pinch it closed right here at the frame so that it helps you get over. You can use your plier to help you make that turn right around the frame, nice and close. Now same for this side, get yourself aligned. Snip the wire down to about 1/2 inch. Tighten that up a little bit. Hold on to the bottom curve. Get your plier on your mark and turn it 90-degree up. And form it to the outside of the curve. Then you can pinch over. Come to this side and use your plier to help you pinch close to the frame and turn it over. Cut the end off, leaving just 1 millimeter so that you can tap it down. Same over here. I trim it very close, leaving just 1 millimeter so that when I tap it down, I don't see it on the front. And that looks pretty good there. So I'll start my second wire. I'll align my marks. I do the bottom one first. Cut it to 1/2 inch. Use your plier and help you turn the wire up. Put a little bend at the end of it. And then use your plier to help you press it close to the frame and loop through the frame. And you can take this side. I use my plier to help me squeeze this direction as well. Just get it positioned and landed so that you can make a nice close cut. When I'm here, cut it leaving just 1 millimeter so that I can take my plier and turn it to the back, press it down, and it's at the back of the frame. Then I'll do the opposite wire. Just going to make sure that everything realigns. And if it's out a millimeter, I'm not going to care so much. What I'm looking at is that these two, here at the point are going to be similar to the other side, to the opposite earring. So I'll cut it down to about 1/2 inch. I'll turn it up there at my mark, turn it over the frame and back through, pinch on top and help it over, and then pinch along the sides and help it all the way over. Just like that. And then we'll cut the back off, leave 1 millimeter, and then get your plier and burnish that down. Okay, just like that. Make sure that my crisscross is still happening in the same place. And that's pretty good there. I think I'm a little low on this one, but that's all right. Put my stone in there, and it should sit fairly evenly, just like the opposite earring. Press it all down flat on your mat, but then my 2 lower ones are sitting, right at the bottom of the stone, my 2 upper ones right at the top temple of the stone. Whoop. And if I hold them together, they're both pretty close. I might raise this one just slightly, and I may not, but I might just scooch this wire a little more this way. I can do that by holding everything steady, and hopefully I can just use my plier and do a very controlled nudge. And when I get it, I can tap everything down nice and tight. And that looks pretty good. All right, whew, hardest part of our day right there, you guys. And now we'll do the tops of the earrings. So what we'll do now is basically repeat the same process for the top 2 wires here, but we're going to make them slightly longer than the 4 points previously. So here are the previous wraps. On this one I did 2 wraps instead of just 1 like our initial frame. But here are the ones that come from the back, the ones that are closest to the stone. And then these second wires, we'll shape them slightly wider, we'll hammer them, sand them, and then we'll attach them just to the outside of the first 4 points. All right, so the process is pretty much the same. You can use your dowel or your hands to shape the wires, and I'm just going to use this Sharpie marker and get a U-bend on these 2 wires. Just like that. But this time I'll get them slightly parted, a little bit more than I did the first ones, so that when I lay them down on top of the previous wires, you can see that, the edges hit just above and below the previous wraps. So that's about good. And we'll want to make them kind of meet in the middle, just like the first pair, because when we put the stone in, the stone is actually going to, push them up a little bit, the belly of the stone will, and it'll part them about 4 millimeter. Okay? So I've got my 2 bent. I'll go ahead and pull my bench block out. Well, before I do that, I like to always hold it up to the frame so that it kind of mimics the first wire and meets about at the middle. And you can go ahead and just mark those positions as well. I'm doing this in the air, so it's a little bit fussy, but those are the two edges where I'm marking the 20 gauge on top right where the edge of the main frame is, so I kind of know what to hammer. And I'm only going to strike my metal right there at the curve between those two wires. So right along here. And you can do that to your liking. And because, you know, I like to keep the wire that I'm working consistent to the side that I'm working, because sometimes the frames are a little bit different, so you want to make it fit each side. So that's about good. And I'll take a second and sand all of that. I'll bring my frame up, and right there where they go over the previous wraps, I'm just going to make a little bend so that I know where to turn them, about like that. I'll go ahead and cut them down to about a ½ inch from the bend to make it a little easier on myself. Pick up the same earring frame. Turn it over to the back so you can see it a little easier and work with it a little easier. And the process is about the same. Hold on to the wire, curve the tip of this, get it pointed into that space, and then get on top of your bend right there at the frame and help it closed. Get to the other side of it, help it all the way around. And I will take this one a complete 360 and bring it to the back, so it'll be 2 wraps in the front. Once I get it close, I'll snip it and use my plier to help me cinch it down tight so that that point, the cut end, lives facing the inside of the frame. Just like that. And that's pretty good there. So I'll repeat the process with this upper one. Curve the top, and then use your plier to help it come down on the frame and come all the way around the frame tight. Push from the sides. Help it over to the back again. I leave it slanted up slightly so that I can snip it close and then tap it down to the back of the frame. So that's pretty good there. I'll repeat with the other wire now. Just going to hold it up here to my frame. I'm going to make sure that my 2 wires are just to the outsides. Change my camera so you can see this one a little bit closer. So they'll be just to the outsides of those wires, and it'll be meeting the center and touching the other wire. Then I'll just take 2 casual bends right there, right close to the frame, so that I know where to bend them, and this time I'll just hammer it instead of marking it and hammering it straight. I can bend them and then put the wires up and hammer your curve. Like that. Go through your sanding process while it's off the frame. That's pretty good. Bring your frame back up. Go ahead and cut these down to about 1/2 inch. I like to turn it over to the back side so I can work with it a little easier. Bring the bend all the way up and over the frame. Curve the front. Ooh, I might have made this one a little bit short to go around twice. We'll see. So there goes one. Bring it all the way over. Let your plier help you. This one's barely going to have enough. And then come over for the second time and tap it down so that that cut lives to the inside of the frame. Ooh, that was barely there. And then this one, do the same. Curve the top of the wire down, get it close to your frame and above the previous wrap. Then you can use your plier to help you tap it all the way around. Nice and tight. Get it to the back. Curve it a little bit more. Trim it close, leaving about 1 millimeter. So that you can tap that wire down and let the cut live in the back. Just like that. These are your 2 hammered sides. Okay? It doesn't seem like the stone is going to fit in there just yet, but even though we squoze those down pretty tightly, we can still put our finger in here, hold your frame together up here so that it stays the same shape and size. And you can just part these slightly up with your fingers. Just get them slightly open. Address them in the middle at the widest point of the curve. Just kind of get them going this way a little bit. The back wires will adjust in the same way. Pull them apart slightly. Just hold on to all of your frame so that you've got a little pocket right there. And then we can slip our stone in. I like to go in from the back. Just hold on to everything and get the stone slipped in there. And then lower these 2 back wires back down into place. And it should sit there right about like that. Put your frame down, settle the front and the back. Let me change my camera. So you'll make sure that you're crossed up here at your intersection where you should be. Just give the tip of the earring a little bit of a love pat, and then same for the belly. You'll notice those 2 wires gave way a little bit so that your stone fits, and I gave some little bit of pressure so that these two back wires flattened out against the back frame. At the end of the day, when we stitch these two together, it should pull, it should keep your frame and your stone in there pretty stable. Okay, so you'll just have a breath of space to either side, just like when we began. Okay. And then we'll be able to adjust a little bit more with our fingers and just get it seated real nice like that. We'll repeat with the second one. Get our two wires, make our curve, our U-shaped curve. Pull them out slightly. Get your second frame up. And that's about right. And then work one wire at a time. If you're going to hammer it, put the wires up. I like to make sure that these two little guys are kind of out of my way. Do your hammer and sanding. Hammer this a little bit more. And then we'll get the frame back up here, get the wire back into position, cut these down to a 1/2 inch, and that should get you around the frame pretty well. You could even start the bend with your fingers a little bit more if you want. Get your plier and turn the nose of the wire down. You can use your pliers or your hands to help you get it through the frame. Pinch tight. Bring it back around to the back. Snip it close. And then tap it down tightly with a plier. We'll do the opposite wire. Get your plier to help you. Turn the tip down. Press through. Come around the frame. Use your plier to help you get it tight. Bring it over. Cut close. and then tap that end down. Then we'll repeat with the opposite wire. Bring it up to your frame. Make sure that it's fairly centered. Turn your two little bars down so you have your mark. Hammer your curve. Do the sanding. Cut the wires to about 1/2 inch. Whoop. Get your hands in the right position and then go ahead and tighten up the wires. Nice and neat. Around your frame. Close cut and then a tight tap so that it stays down. I cut this one a little bit more. Same thing. Use your plier and help you turn around the frame. And a very tight tap. All right, so just like that, make sure that you're still got your marks visible up here. You can always remeasure if it goes out, if your marks rub out, and then carefully part these two open slightly. Come to the back. Part these two open slightly to make a little pocket. Get your stone slipped in there. And then lower these wires back into position. Come down to your mat or your bench. Hold your frame against your stone. Push the tip down. Rub the belly down a little bit. And make sure you're still crisscrossed at the top here where you should be. And then that'll all tighten up a little bit more once we turn these two top wires down. So that looks pretty good. And it looks consistent to the other earring. I'm happy with that. All right, so we'll work one earring at a time and we'll start to turn these two wires down. So we'll just make sure that your frame is crisscrossed up here where we want it to be. We're going to use the lower wire first. So you'll hold everything in position, take your plier, turn up 90 degrees. And just like all of our other stuff, will turn right over itself and straight back down upon itself. Right there at the crisscross where you marked. Once you get it turned over, you can use your same thin plier or you can go to a wider plier. But once you get it there, do a very tight squeeze, almost as if you want to dent the wire. So you see I've squeezed so hard that it put a little flat spot there, and that really locks that down. Okay? Go ahead and while this wire is down, it should be sloping along the bottom earring frame. Right here at the top of this curve, just want to put your thumb into that negative space and make a very soft turn to the opposite side. Just like that. When you get over the belly of the stone, hold it there, right on top, and make an S curve going back in the opposite direction. So the whole thing kind of looks like that. Okay? When you get it to here, go ahead and continue this curve. I like to continue the curve. You've got about a half an inch or so there. Don't go too short. You can always cut back, but you can't add the wire. It's about a half an inch turn. And then I'll get my round nose plier. I'm holding the wire steady here at the belly where it should be. Get my round nose plier on it and just turn a very tight and cute little spiral into that spot right there. And you can always trim it back if it's too big. Like I'll trim it a little bit and then turn it in a little bit more. About like that, so that it fits there. We're going to hammer it so it'll grow a little bit. Alright, so that wire should look kind of like that. We can catch the opposite side up, the opposite earring. So once you get your stone seated, let's make sure that your two crisscrosses up here are aligned. Push the belly down, squeeze the sides in, make sure the stone is nice and seated. And then we'll come up here to our marks. I'm going to pull mine in slightly because they parted a little bit. So I'll hold them right where they crisscross. I'll go to the wire underneath. I'll start a 90-degree bend straight up into the air, straight over the other wire, and right back onto itself. So it's just a nice hairpin. When you get that, I'm holding the extended wire, and I'm going to take a real steady grip right here where they crisscross. I'll press gently until the wire lands, on the wire that's inside. And once they're touching, I'll get a real tight squeeze on this upper wire, almost as if to dent it. You see that little dent, and you felt this one kind of crush in a little bit. Make that a real controlled move so that it stays and, doesn't go anywhere from there. So once you get it looking like this, you'll put your thumb right here at the top of this, where those wraps are, into the open space. Make a nice easy curve to the opposite side and out where these wires wrap. So a nice little S curve there like that. Then once you get that, hold it here at the belly and turn in the opposite direction so you get a little S curve. And then cut, it's about a half an inch from here to the cut, from the bottom of the stone to the cut. So almost right there at the edge of the frame. I'm holding the wire in place at the belly of the stone, getting my round nose plier. I'm getting a very tight little spiral on the tip of that. And I can cut out my little munchy tip if I need to. And get in there and turn it slightly more. Just like that. You can press it down right here, so there's kind of like a, it goes down and then up over the stone and then down again. A little bit of 3D curve on that. I think I'm going to shape this one a little bit smaller. So I'm going to trim a little bit more off of it. Take it in a little tighter. Compare them, and that looks pretty good. The wire should come, sloping down just to the inside of this frame wire, over the belly, just to the inside of this wire, or, right up against it. So that way you can tie on right there, but we'll hammer all of that. That's optional. So once you get your turns and your curves looking the way you want them to be, clean up the tip of that slightly. I'm just going to snip the very tip of that off since I munched it. You can always take your plier and turn that up a little bit so you can reach it a little better if you need to. That's kind of my cheat move, is that I snip off the very munchy tip. Then you can lay the wire back down onto itself lightly. So while it's loose and not tied on yet, pull it out to the right hand side. So, here's where it's going over the wire, so pull it out this way, just out to the side, enough that you can hammer it. Don't change your curve at all. So I'm kind of watching, the hinge right here, just enough so I can reach what I want to hammer. The wire has a slight 3D on it, so you'll hold it appropriately so you can leave those curves in there. I'm just going to hammer out this tip. So I hammered it just to flare it, not too much. And then I'm going to hammer out this little curve here too. Might be tricky to lay on the bench block, so sometimes the corner is a nice spot to go. And I just tapped it a few times right there, so I have a little bit of a flat flare and then a little bit of a flat flare there. And I'll just sand all of this. Let me change the camera yet again. So I'll sand all of that while it's out here. The inside edge of that cut, the top of that curve, so it looks nice. You can sand to your liking. Once you get it sanded, you're going to push it right back into its place. So right back there, and just use your fingers to help lay it back down. We'll end up tying it. That's about good. You can be over this bar a little bit if you want to be, or you can, make it smaller to begin with. I don't mind being over because I'm going to tie that a little bit. Okay, so it should look about like that. Catch the second earring up. Same thing from here. It comes over this wire, so you'll pull it out this way in the direction of the loop. Just out to the side. Make sure you don't lose your curve here. This should have been squozen down, tight enough that it shouldn't move by you doing this. I'm going to snip that little tip slightly more. So hammer to flare your little curve out, and then get positioned so that you can hammer this little curve here. Just make them light little hits, just to give yourself a little bit of texture and hardening. Take the time to sand and file everything if you need to. Uh-oh. Well, I had a small Jolene, so I had to pause for a minute and go take care of her. But I have a little munchie at the top there, and I don't want to cut any more off, so I'm actually going to use my file and clean up that end. Just like we did in live stream with the Mila pendant, you can always shape and file these little decorative elements as much as you please, or not at all. To get them looking the way you want. So for sake of time, that's all I'm going to sand. But I think you get the idea. And then I'm just going to gently move it back into place, and right here is where you can give a little pressure. Settle it back onto your frame nicely. Then it should snap right back into place right there. Beautiful. Compare them, and that looks lovely. Beautiful. So now we'll deal with the top wire, and just like in many of our other techniques, I'll come to the outside of the wire this time, and I'll give it a little more space, so it's about 2 millimeter. I'm just a little bit deeper into my finer plier here, and I'm just parallel with this wire over here. I'll lift straight up and straight over and back onto itself, so I have a little bit of a place for my earring wire right there, just like in several of our other earrings. And when I get that flipped over right here, I'll take it by the side, hold on to the leading wire and the earring, and give it a little bit of a sexy turn, just like that. And then you can put your plier here and on top, tap it down so that it just touches this wire underneath it, and you have a little bit of a opening there for your earring wire, and you have a cute little flip up there. You can, if you want to, take both and pinch a little bit, readjust that curve, and take this curve out off the frame right here at the wraps. About like that. Let's get them pinched nicely together right there. From here, I'm going to put my thumb in the open space right here. I'm going to make a curve that comes right around here and back up. So if you look at our example earring, we've just made our little flip, and our curve is going to come right above the belly of the top forehead of our stone into the negative space, and we'll make a cute little spiral. And you can do anything you want right there. You can make a bigger spiral or a smaller one or none at all. You can tie some bead balls in there for a couple of different looks. So I'm sloping off the frame right here at about my wraps. I'm going to put my thumb into that negative space. You have to kind of raise the wire a little bit because we have to get over the forehead of the stone. Just start your curve, keep the wire over here to the side, hold that curve, and then just follow this inside curve. I like to make a full teardrop in here. Bring it all the way over so that you can get an eyeball on your design. And then you can cut about halfway, in the length to this one. So right about here, or to your own liking. Just going to take a nice clean snip there. I'll get my round nose plier. You have to kind of hold on to this bottom curve so that you have some leverage to move this little bit of wire here. Just work patiently. Hold on to your curve right there. Start the spiral. And just take it to the inside of your frame until you love it. And that's pretty good. I'm going to trim that back slightly. I always give myself a little bit more there because I know I'm going to munch it coming around. So I'll just snip the tip of it off, open that spiral up a little bit more, use my fine plier to help me shape it if I need to into a cute little design on top of the bead. So that looks pretty good. And same thing from here. Here's your hinge. So I will swing this out to the right, and hammering is optional. I'm just going to slowly and carefully work this off the frame to the right hand side so I can reach it for hammering. Bring your bench block in. Get that little spiral situated on the block. And then carefully hammer to your liking, and then while it's out here, sand it and clean that any little edges that you might need. I'm going to snip the tip of that just slightly more. That looks pretty good to me. So then we can move it back into place. Hold this up here and just scooch it back onto your frame. Push the head of that spiral down until it's beautiful. And that's pretty good there. And we'll shape these a little bit more as when we go to tie them together. Okay, so let's catch the second earring up. And just shape them with your hands. I'm going to flare this one out a little bit more and try to make them look similar. I'm going to open this one up a little bit more since this one is a little wider. So I'll just come back up here and get back on my spiral head and back turn a little bit, and that's pretty good there. Okay, so I'm going to trim another millimeter off the tip of this and get the munch off of it. I'll fold it out to the side, swing it out to the side, making sure that it curves right here, and then I'll just enough to hammer it. And then while it's out here, you can sand everything and hammer it a little bit more. And that's pretty good. We're almost done, you guys. Right after this, we tie these little components up, and then we make our earring wire, and then you can enjoy them. Push it back into place, and there you have it. A beautiful pair of earrings. So now we'll take our 26 gauge and we'll just tie some things up. I'm going to take this out a little bit more to get that to fit a little nicer right there. Alright, so now we have our 3 inches of 26 gauge or 28 gauge wire. And we'll just tie up a few of these spots. I find that right here is a nice spot to tie the long one onto the frame. I just make 3 wraps, so I'll hold on to the fragment, stretch over, make sure it's laying there the way you want it to, hold it in place. Use your plier to help you make 3 wraps, nice and tight. So there's 2 full wraps. Go 1 more. So I've got nice 3 clean wraps there. I'll hold on to everything. Give a little tension on the wire, do big circles until it breaks. It'll be a clean break underneath there. You can do the same to this side. Hold on to everything, give a little bit of tension, and you can turn the wire, or you can get your cutter in there, really deeply in there, and snip that wire out so that it can't be seen. Okay? Just give a tiny little tap if needed. To all of those wires. And that looks pretty good. And then the other place we can tie is either right here or to the opposite side. I think for design it looks better tied over here on the opposite side, but that's up to you. So you can shape your little curve right here to where they meet nicely and you can get a nice tie on the inside of that spiral. So I'll take another bit of 26 gauge. Come over here and tie this one up. Give yourself about 1 inch to hold on to it. I like to tie the spiral laying to the inside, so even if I have to push it a little bit to form it to the inside, I do that so that you know, it doesn't snag. And a couple of little ties over here. We'll just make 3 of them. There's 2. Pull this first one nice and tight. Let's get rid of the first one, the first leading one. Just hold everything, give a little tension, do big circles until it breaks. And with this one, we can cut it leaving just 1 millimeter or a couple of millimeter. Take your fine plier, get right at the end of that cut, turn it down and towards you know, the open space underneath there, and then get on top of it and tap it, and it'll go underneath there for you. All right, so that's tied up and that looks lovely. And then the last spot to tie up obviously is right here. When we put these two together, you'll see the frame came in slightly. And that's a good thing. It should meet both sides of your stone. And here's where you might have a little difficulty sliding underneath, but you can do it. Just hold on to an inch, leave a fragment. Oh, there she goes again. Okay, so pull it through, hold on to that fragment, then you can get your plier and, you know, keep your thumb on top of that and just pull in both directions to tighten it up. Get a slight curve on the long side of the wire. Then you can whittle your way between these. You can make 3 wraps here. 3 wraps should do it, or you can make 5 wraps if you feel like you just want a little extra security. And you can wrap from either side. Just keep them nice and neat, work patiently. Or you can just do 4. So there goes 4. It's going to be, you know, you can't, it's hard to go underneath there again. So you can cut up top, leaving about 2 millimeters to spare. Get a fine plier, get on the tip of the cut, turn it all the way down, then get on top of the wire and help it slide underneath. You can do the same to this side. Get a nice tight pull on it. Cut it, leaving a couple of millimeters to spare. Get a fine plier, get on the end of the cut, turn it down, and then get on top of it and slip it under. And that earring is complete. So now we'll tie up the other one. And that looks pretty good, you guys. All right, so we make a couple of little ear wires now, and we're all set to wear our beautiful earrings. Settle everything down once you get it all tied up. Just put yourself back down here on your mat. Get the tip onto where 4 squares cross. Check the size of your earring. Should be about 1.5. Maybe with that little flipper it's slightly more. And just gently give love taps to everything. Make sure that the earring is settled. Check this other one. Put your tip on where 4 points cross. Oh, this one's a little bit taller, but that's okay. I'm not stressing it. I think it's a little taller. Let's see what I got here. Oh, it's a millimeter or so taller, and that's okay. That's okay. It's pretty close to the other one. The other one, the bottom wire hits at 1/2 inch, and the top wire, I made this flipper a little bit longer than that one, and that's all right. I'm going to put a slight back bend on it to help correct the size a little bit. And that's close enough for me. That's pretty good. All right, so let's go ahead and make the earring wires. And we'll use the 2 remaining 20 gauge wires that we saved from earlier. Where did my other one go? And that's what happens. Alright, so using the 2 remaining 20 gauge wires, I'm just going to make my earring hooks. I'm going to use a 4mm dowel. I've got these 2 wires the same length, and I'm just going to hold them right there at the edge of my pliers. These are my step pliers. So you can see just the edge of my wire there, and I'll come all the way around until I meet them. So it's pretty much, you know, a complete circle like that. While it's in the dowel, I just took them out to show you. While it's in the plier, I'm going to put just the tip of where they meet right there against the opposite plier and turn these wires slightly down and back so that I have 2 little circular hooks like this, loops like this. I'll turn them so that the openings are opposite of each other. Just lay them down on your block. Go ahead and press everything flat. Give a little hammer to this bottom curve. That's for design, but that's also to help harden it. Once you have both of them hammered out, you could do the same. Sand them if you want to. And I put them back together again so that these stems are side by side and the heads are together. Each opening is to the inside so that I have a mirrored earring hook. And you can measure or you can just eyeball it. I'm going to use the 8mm dowel in my plier, and I'm going to hold it so that they pinch at about a 1/2 inch. It's about a 1/2 inch from where they curve to where the plier is actually going to hold on to it, and that is to your preference. The longer you make that stem, the longer the front earring is. I like to use about a 1/2 inch. So just like that, and then just bend them together right around your dowel until they kind of slanted towards each other like that. I shouldn't have taken them out, I was trying to show you. So that they're slanted together like that, and then while you're holding on to them, just below this, the loops, give yourself a little bit of a back bend. And then right about 2 or 3mm below that is where you're going to cut. Just take one nice even snip together. So then you have nice little earring hooks. It's open so that we can slip the earring in, but before I do, I like to hammer this curve as well. So get your block back up and just get situated on the block to where you can hit this curve for hardening. Just like that. And do the opposite earring. Once you get it hammered, you can take a nice flathead if you need to and pinch right here to straighten it out, plus also just to give it some hardening right there at the stem. Do the same to this side. Just pinch it right there, give some hardening and make sure it's nice and straight. Close that little opening. And now to get the earring in, we open it up scissor-wise. So you never pull the loop out, you always pull the loop forward. So right here I'll hold on to everything, pull the loop forward, slip my earring into place. And that loop can be as big or as small as you want to make it. and then just put it back into place there, and that's cute. Do the same with the opposite one. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Certainly there's a lot of room for alterations, and modifications, on these earrings. So you can add, bead balls, or do this in square wire and twist the wire so you have some scalloping. There's a lot that you can do. And certainly these earring hooks, you could have made this loop a lot smaller if you wanted to, but sometimes that's nice to have a deliberately large loop for design. And they're so cute. We want to file and sand these ends so that they're comfortable to go through the earring, and then you're all done. You can patina and polish these if you want to, or you can just wash them with a little bit of soap and water and then enjoy wearing them. If you guys have enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. Let me know how you're feeling about this project. They're darling little earrings. They look really fantastic in sterling silver. And they look great in copper as well. I've done several pair, and I've actually oxidized them and polished them out, and I love them. So they look, the metal kind of looks like this after it's been patinaed and polished out, and that's beautiful, but it looks gorgeous, as bare copper as well. So there you go, you guys. I hope you love Jessabelle, and I hope you make lots of them. They're a fun earring, it's a fun style, and it gets you into a technique of some very simple hammering and layering, hammering and shaping. And then certainly, because of the way we set this up, if you made that loop bigger up there, you could pass a chain through there, and this could be a simple drop necklace pendant as well. All right, much love, you guys. Thanks again for being here, members, and we will see you for the next one. Take care.